The mistress thought she won when the millionaire left his pregnant wife, but the wife had the last laugh. Sometimes, the person you believe will stand by you forever is the one who turns your world upside down. In the bustling world of high society galas and endless champagne toasts, a pregnant wife was abandoned by the millionaire she loved, left in the shadows for a cunning mistress who appeared to have everything. But appearances lie, and the ultimate victory does not always belong to the person who claims the spotlight. This is a tale of betrayal, heartbreak, and unexpected triumph, where karmic retribution takes center stage. Brace yourself for a roller coaster of shocking twists as we uncover how the wife had the last laugh. Richard Astor was no ordinary man. He was the youngest son of a family that prided itself on its multi-generational real estate empire, stretching across Manhattan and parts of Chicago. By the age of 35, Richard had established Astor Enterprises, a luxury property company that regularly made headlines on business news networks. He was a tall, charismatic figure who attracted the attention of both wealthy investors and socialites. He had grown up in the shadow of other powerful names. Once, at a charity gala in Midtown, Richard had brushed shoulders with none other than Donald Trump, exchanging a quick handshake and a knowing smile about New York's cutthroat real estate world. That fleeting moment had boosted his confidence, symbolizing that he, Richard Astor, had arrived among the elite. Before the glitz and glamour absorbed him, Richard had been a different person, humble, earnest, and deeply caring. That was the Richard his wife, Cynthia Astor, had fallen in love with. The two had met at Columbia University while both were studying business management. Cynthia, an exceptionally intelligent and diligent woman, had noticed him not merely for his family name, but for his wit and unwavering determination. Together, they had dreamed of building a legacy that combined financial success with genuine care for the people around them. Their early marriage years were idyllic. They traveled to exotic destinations, dined in the best restaurants, and spent quiet nights in a small but tastefully furnished Manhattan apartment. Together, they planned philanthropic initiatives. Richard had big ideas about creating affordable housing complexes, while Cynthia was keen to sponsor scholarships for underprivileged kids. In those days, the glimmer in Richard's eyes shone with possibility, not greed. But as Astor Enterprises soared to new heights, the demands of high society took their toll on Richard. He found himself rubbing elbows with more influential figures, real estate moguls, Wall Street financiers, and even celebrities from Hollywood's A-list. The novelty of being recognized, applauded, and praised infected him. It seeped into his core, whispering that he deserved more power, more recognition, more excitement. The old, idealistic Richard receded into memory, replaced by a man who savored every ego boost. Cynthia, pregnant with their first child, was thrilled about their future. Finally, they were starting a family, something they had spoken about often during those late nights at Columbia, but she was also increasingly concerned about her husband's changes. His once gentle expressions of love and devotion were overshadowed by dismissive waves of the hand when she asked how his day went. Late-night business meetings became frequent. The philanthropic spirit that had once united them was overshadowed by hush-hush deals with shadowy partners. Little did Cynthia know that behind the glimmer of Richard's new connections lurked a calculating seductress who saw him as her golden ticket, Alicia Monroe. Alicia was a rising name on the socialite circuit, a woman with expensive tastes, sharp instincts, and an unparalleled appetite for wealth. She had grown up in modest circumstances in rural Pennsylvania before moving to New York, adopting a new accent and angling her way into the city's upper crust. She had modeled, dated a hedge fund manager briefly, then pivoted to real estate by working as an interior designer for boutique hotels. In a short span, Alicia had collected a network of wealthy acquaintances who appreciated her charm and cunning. She was relentless, and when she set her sights on the next big prize, she stopped at nothing. It was at a penthouse launch party in the heart of Tribeca that Alicia first met Richard. Their introduction was orchestrated by a mutual friend, none other than Warren Jeffries, a powerful developer who had known Alicia through business circles. From the moment Alicia smiled at Richard across that marble-topped bar, his fate was sealed. She wore a sparkling Versace gown and had her hair styled in a cascading wave that framed her luminous face. Her entire presence screamed wealth and possibility, exactly what Richard yearned to add to his newly minted self-image. Over several weeks, Alicia drew him in, weaving a web of compliments and laughter, feeding his ego with carefully placed remarks, how brilliant his insights were, how thrilling his stories. Meanwhile, Alicia feigned innocence, quietly boasting that it was such a pleasure to learn from a visionary like him. He was captivated. Soon their flirtatious banter turned into clandestine drinks after work, and from drinks into late-night rendezvous at exclusive hotel suites. All the while Cynthia, pregnant and home alone most nights, tried to rationalize her husband's absence. Surely these were important deals he had to seal, crucial meetings that would solidify their child's future. She wanted to believe that he still carried the ideals they once shared. Yet, a gnawing sense of dread weighed on her heart. Intuition told her that someone was devouring Richard's attention. She would find subtle hints, an unfamiliar perfume lingering on his jacket, text messages arriving late with no explanation, or receipts from swanky bars and restaurants she had never heard of. Day by day, the tension escalated. Cynthia grew more anxious, torn between her loyalty to the loving partner she once knew and a growing suspicion that the man beside her was morphing into a stranger. Each time her nerves frayed, she'd rest her hand on her swelling belly, finding comfort in the promise of new life. That child meant everything to her, and for the sake of that child, she tried to remain calm, to give Richard the benefit of the doubt. She prayed each night that he would remember their dreams and come back to her. A black stretch limousine pulled up outside the Astor townhome on East 74th Street late one evening. Rain pounded the pavement, lightning illuminated the sky, and thunder rattled the windows. Inside the living room, Cynthia paced near the fireplace, occasionally touching her belly as she waited for Richard's return. She braced herself for another tense argument or, at best, an icy conversation interrupted by the flickering of his phone. When Richard finally stepped in, his coat dripping with rainwater, Cynthia felt a surge of conflicting emotions, relief that he was home safely, anger at his continued absence, and fear of discovering more evidence of betrayal. He did not greet her with a kiss on the cheek as he once did. Instead, he placed his phone on the marble countertop and sighed heavily, as though carrying the weight of the world. "I need to talk to you," he said, avoiding her gaze. His voice sounded foreign, devoid of warmth. Cynthia's heart thundered. She waited for him to say more, but a bitter silence lingered until he finally lifted his eyes to meet hers. There was no kindness in them, just an unmistakable flicker of guilt. "I don't know how else to say this," Richard said. I'm not happy anymore. I can't keep living a lie." Cynthia stepped back, her palms sweaty and her chest tight. She had expected some confrontation, but the directness of his words felt like a dagger. Her mind raced. Was he really going to do this? She was 8 months pregnant. They were supposed to be preparing a nursery, not severing ties. "Are you saying," Cynthia began with trembling lips, "that you want a separation? A divorce?" The horrifying thought hovered between them. Richard's shoulders slumped. "I've met someone else," he said flatly, as though that statement alone exonerated him from months of emotional neglect. "You and IWEVE grown apart. We're practically living separate lives." The devastation hit Cynthia like a tidal wave. Tears brimmed in her eyes, and she struggled to speak through a constricted throat. "This isn't just about us," she whispered, pressing a hand against her belly. "We're about to become parents. Doesn't that matter to you?" Richard's gaze flickered to her round stomach, but he seemed more burdened than remorseful. "I'm sorry," he muttered, then exhaled. "We'll figure something out. I'll make sure you and the baby are taken care of, but I can't lie to you anymore. I love Alicia." Hearing the mistress's name stung. Cynthia had suspected a betrayal, but had hoped beyond reason that he would snap out of it. That mention of Alicia, so brazenly stated in their home, confirmed everything she dreaded. She sank onto the couch, tears sliding down her cheeks. That night, Richard packed a small suitcase of essentials and left. The next morning, social media exploded with photographs. Alicia Munro, wearing an emerald gown, beaming as she accompanied Richard to a lavish charity dinner. They stood close, Alicia's hand resting possessively on his arm, as though planting a flag. Cynthia recognized the event. She had once planned to attend it with Richard. Now the pictures were a painful testament to how swiftly and publicly her husband had moved on. Support for Cynthia poured in from friends who had read the tabloids or glimpsed the trending hashtags linking Alicia's name to Richard's. Texts and calls flooded her phone. The knowledge that the world was witnessing her humiliation made her feel even more exposed. Some friends asked how they could help, but she didn't know what to say. Others offered condolences and cheap platitudes. It all blended into a cacophony of noise that provided no solace. Yet amid the heartbreak, Cynthia felt a flicker of resilience. She was carrying her child, and that meant she had to be strong. Maybe life was ripping apart the future she had imagined, but she still had the capacity to build something new from the rubble. For Alicia, the triumph was sweet and immediate. In her mind, she had bagged one of New York's most eligible bachelors. Perhaps not the top billionaire, but a rising star with a vault of wealth and prestige. She envisioned a life of jet-setting across Europe, hosting lavish gatherings at Richard's penthouses, and doubling her brand in the eyes of society. Gone were her days of hustling for the next big catch. She believed she had secured her place among the city's elite. Her ticket was Richard's name, and she was eager to stamp it on every invitation and contract she could. To emphasize her victory, Alicia posted a photograph on Instagram, her and Richard smiling in front of a new high-rise property Astor Enterprises had recently acquired. The caption read, "Celebrating new beginnings and endless possibilities, hashtag Astor Enterprises, hashtag New York Life." The image went viral, triggering an avalanche of gossip blogs analyzing Alicia's cunning rise. Some championed her as a clever socialite who knew how to hustle. Others labeled her a homewrecker. Alicia dismissed the latter as jealous nobodies. She had Richard now, and in her mind, that was all that mattered. She began planning small steps to rebuild her future. After careful thought, she reached out to an old mentor from Columbia, Professor Amelia Hollingsworth, an esteemed economist who had always believed in Cynthia's potential. The professor listened with compassion as Cynthia recounted her turmoil, then offered practical advice. "Use this heartbreak as a catalyst, dear," Amelia said. "You're on the cusp of motherhood, and that alone can unearth reserves of strength you never knew you had." That conversation sparked an idea. Cynthia still had connections in the non-profit sector, particularly with organizations that sought to provide supportive housing for single mothers and low-income families. She decided to pivot her skill set towards something meaningful, creating real change through real estate, ironically echoing the philanthropic plans she once shared with Richard. But this time, she wouldn't rely on anyone else's vision or approval. Her first call was to Sarah Hopkins, who managed a local women's shelter in Brooklyn. Sarah had known Cynthia for years and respected her earnest desire to make a difference. I don't have a lot of funds right now, Cynthia explained hesitantly, but I do have a strong network of contacts, and I can help raise awareness, bring in donors, coordinate expansions. I just need a foot in the door. Sarah, thrilled by the prospect of fresh ideas and connections, welcomed her enthusiastically. They arranged a series of meetings to discuss ways to expand the shelter's services, from counseling programs to job training. The small step reinvigorated Cynthia, giving her a sense of purpose beyond the sorrow of her collapsing marriage. Meanwhile, Alicia relished the public persona she was crafting. She ensured paparazzi snapped pictures of her and Richard holding hands, sipping champagne at elite lounges, or stepping out of a chauffeured Bentley to attend glitzy events. Her social media was saturated with polished images that showcased her new high society life. She even managed to finagle an invitation to a private rooftop cocktail party hosted by a famous fashion designer. There, she made sure to flaunt her closeness with Richard, whispering sweet nothings into his ear whenever she spotted a photographer. She had no illusions about love. This was a strategic takeover and acquisition. She was not there to be a dutiful partner. She was there to expand her brand and influence. Richard, swept up in Alicia's magnetism, lived as though in a trance, blissfully ignoring the more disconcerting parts of her character. He convinced himself that Alicia's ambition was simply akin to his own. When she recommended extravagant purchases, from a diamond necklace to a private weekend in Cabo, he obliged. He reasoned that such expenditures were trivial compared to his growing fortune. Alicia coaxed him to open his wallet as easily as she demanded top-tier reservations in the city's most exclusive dining establishments. Only occasionally, in the quiet hours of night, when Alicia was asleep and the buzz of champagne wore off, did Richard feel a pang of regret. He would think of Cynthia, her warmth, her quiet laugh, the gentle way she used to place her hand on his chest and remind him to slow down. Now, in Alicia's world, everything moved at lightning speed. He rarely had time to consider fatherhood. If his mind drifted to Cynthia's baby bump, he quickly suppressed the thought, convincing himself it was too late to salvage what he had destroyed. While Alicia and Richard rode their wave of indulgence, Cynthia focused on her mission. She spent her days brainstorming with Sarah Hopkins, drafting proposals for improved shelter infrastructure, researching grants, and scheduling meetings with philanthropic groups. Her nights were more difficult. She battled insomnia, haunted by memories of her marriage. Still, the knowledge that she was forging a path for herself and, eventually, her child kept her spirits afloat. Another surprising source of encouragement emerged in the form of Jennifer Liu, a high-powered corporate attorney who had once been best friends with Cynthia during their time at Columbia. Jennifer reached out to Cynthia after seeing the media storm about Richard and Alicia. "I'm here for you," Jennifer said over coffee one afternoon. "Whatever you need, legal, emotional, or just a friend to vent, to count me in." Over the next few weeks, Jennifer helped Cynthia quietly gather financial records and assets she was entitled to under her marriage to Richard. Together, they discovered that Cynthia technically held a small percentage of Astor Enterprises shares due to an agreement they had made early in their marriage. While it was nowhere near a controlling stake, it was enough to give Cynthia some leverage if Richard or Alicia tried to outmaneuver her legally. They kept this information private, anticipating a future confrontation. Unbeknownst to Cynthia, Alicia was already plotting ways to secure a slice of Astor Enterprises. She kept hinting to Richard that her design expertise could elevate the brand's aesthetic, that her social clout could attract foreign investors. She wanted a role in the company, a formal title that would allow her access to executive meetings and strategic decisions. Richard, though hesitant, was too infatuated to refuse outright. He mumbled non-committal phrases like, "We'll see," or "Let's talk it over with the board." Alicia took this as a signal to push harder. The seeds of conflict were planted. On one side, Alicia believed she could shape Astor Enterprises into her personal kingdom. On the other, Cynthia was rediscovering her own power. The tension was about to erupt in a spectacular clash, though none of them realized just how cataclysmic it would be. Late one night, a month before Cynthia's due date, her phone buzzed. She almost ignored it, assuming it was another friend offering kind condolences, but the caller ID read, "Rich." Her heart hammered. Since walking out, Richard had barely spoken to her, save for a few terse messages about transferring funds for her doctor's appointments. She picked up, voice trembling. "Yes? I need to see you," Richard said abruptly. She could hear noise in the background. Was it sirens? Or perhaps the traffic hum of downtown Manhattan? "It's almost midnight," Cynthia replied, trying to steady her voice. "What's going on?" He hesitated. I am outside your door." Her heart practically leapt out of her chest. She rushed downstairs, unbolting the door to find Richard standing in the dim light of the porch lamp. He looked disheveled, anxiety etched into every line of his face. "May I come in?" he asked softly. She nodded, stepping aside. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Richard paced the living room, running a hand through his hair. She watched him, her emotions swinging wildly between concern, anger, and residual affection. Finally, he sank into an armchair and stared at his hands. "I'm sorry to show up like this. I didn't know where else to go." Cynthia folded her arms, reluctant to let her guard down. "What happened?" "She's draining me," he said in a hushed tone, as though speaking too loudly would break the last shred of composure. "Alicia, her spending is out of control. She's pressuring me to sign over more authority in the company to her. She wants a formal title, a seat on the board. She claims it's for synergy or brand alignment, but I can see through it." He exhaled, a pained expression crossing his features. "I don't know what to do." It was an astonishing confession. Cynthia felt an odd mixture of vindication and pity. "She's your partner now," she said quietly. "I'm not sure how I can help." Richard stared at her as though searching for the woman he once leaned on for wisdom. "I made a mistake, a huge mistake." He paused, eyes glistening. "I know I don't deserve it, but I need advice. Your advice, Cynthia." Her eyes brimmed with tears, but she held them back. Yes, there was a part of her that still loved him, but she also remembered the night spent alone, the baby kicking inside her while he was out on the town with Alicia. The confusion tore at her heart. "I can't just fix this for you," she said, voice shaking. "You abandoned me. You abandoned our baby." Richard's gaze flickered to her belly, as though truly seeing it for the first time. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I've been so blind, so selfish." She struggled to maintain composure. "Yes, you have. That's the truth. I can't turn back time," he mumbled, leaning forward, head in his hands. "But maybe I can still make things right for you, for our child, for the company." Cynthia stood there, her mind reeling. Anger coursed through her, tempered by a flicker of compassion. She had always been the rational thinker, the one who balanced Richard's passions with sound strategy. But now she had her own path, her own plans. Did she even want to help him? After a long silence, she said, "Sit down. Let's talk about the legal ramifications. But understand this, I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because Astor Enterprises was partly my dream too, and I don't want Alicia dismantling what we once planned to build: affordable housing, charitable programs, and also," she placed a hand on her belly, "our child's future might be tied to that company. I can't stand by and let someone like Alicia run it into the ground." Over the next hour, they went through details of Alicia's demands, analyzing the potential consequences if she gained a seat on the board. Cynthia recognized that if Alicia secured any formal power, it would be nearly impossible to pry her away later. She recalled the share certificates she held and realized those might be a protective measure. You need to contact the board members and call an emergency session, Cynthia advised. Get ahead of her. Make it clear that any immediate appointment is out of the question. If they push back, mention that I, as a shareholder, oppose such a move. I might be a minority stakeholder, but my stance could still influence them, especially if they respect me and my track record from before. She paused, eyeing the man who was once her world. But let me be clear, this doesn't change anything between us personally. I'm helping you out of principle, not because I'm welcoming you back. Richard nodded, a swirl of regret and gratitude on his face. Thank you, he whispered. I'll keep you informed. Soon he rose to leave, pausing by the door. Cynthia, he said, I miss you. You have no idea how much. I never realized how good we had it until... She held up a hand to stop him. Good night, Richard. He took the hint and slipped out into the darkness. Cynthia locked the door behind him, leaning against it with a heavy sigh. Her heart thudded painfully. She had taken a huge step by offering her expertise, but she reminded herself it was for the good of the company's philanthropic potential and for her child's inheritance. Anything else was secondary. Meanwhile, Richard got into his town car, driven by his longtime chauffeur, Marcus. He stared out the window at the quiet streetlights. Guilt ate at him. He was heading back to Alicia's penthouse technically. He still lived there, but the prospect filled him with dread. He wondered how he had strayed so far from his initial dreams, from the life he and Cynthia had once shared. Life had a twisted sense of irony. The mistress who had seduced him was now bleeding him dry, and the pregnant wife he had forsaken was the one person capable of saving him from total ruin. If that wasn't karma knocking, he didn't know what was. A few days after that midnight meeting, Alicia began to suspect something was amiss. Richard seemed more guarded, particularly about Astor Enterprises. He spent hours on hushed phone calls, ignoring her attempts to pry details out of him. Worse still, he declined a high-profile invitation to attend a new Broadway premiere, with her a move that enraged Alicia, who had carefully curated an outfit and intended to be photographed alongside him. One morning she cornered him in the kitchen of their luxury penthouse, arms crossed. What's going on, Richard? Are you hiding something? He tried to brush it off. Just the usual headaches of corporate politics, he said vaguely. We have some urgent matters with the board. Time-sensitive deals. Alicia narrowed her eyes. She knew the look in Richard's gaze, one of anxious calculation. He was planning something behind her back. Furious, she stormed out, pulling out her phone to call a contact of her own, Maxwell Granger, a financial consultant who owed her a favor. If Richard was holding secret meetings and reorganizing the board, Alicia wanted to know. That afternoon, Maxwell discreetly slipped her some intel. An emergency board session was being convened to address potential changes in leadership, which might impact Astor Enterprises' share distribution and appointments. Alicia's name, apparently, was on the docket, but not in the favorable way she had hoped. If she was to secure her seat, she'd have to move quickly. Armed with this information, Alicia arrived at the Astor Enterprises headquarters unannounced. Security hesitated, but eventually let her pass, given her unofficial status as Richard's partner. She strutted into the executive floor, her high heels echoing on the polished marble. Startled employees looked on, whispering. Alicia exuded an intimidating aura, her perfectly tailored suit reinforcing her determination to seize control. In Richard's office, she found him with two senior board members, Mr. Ellison and Miss Rutherford. They were reviewing documents on a glass-topped desk. Alicia stepped in without knocking, ignoring their startled expressions. "Am I interrupting something?" she asked icily. Richard stood up. Startled, "Alicia, what are you doing here?" She pouted, feigning innocence. "I heard you were holding important meetings without me. That feels so disrespectful, considering my involvement in your life and the future of this company." She turned to the board members, offering a rehearsed smile. "I hope you don't mind if I join. After all, Astor Enterprises is practically my family now." Mr. Ellison exchanged a glance with Miss Rutherford, both looking uncomfortable. Richard forced a tight smile. "Alicia, we're in the middle of something confidential. Please step outside for a minute." She cut him off. "No, I think I'll stay, because I'm not leaving until I'm given a formal role in this company." Her gaze swept across the three of them. "I've poured energy into supporting your brand. I've brought new clients to your real estate showings, introduced you to influential investors, and elevated your public profile. Surely that warrants a seat at the table." The board members exchanged uncertain looks. Miss Rutherford cleared her throat. "Alicia, we appreciate any contributions you've made, but these decisions are not made on impulse. They require an official vote and alignment with our corporate bylaws." Alicia's nostrils flared. "Perhaps you don't understand what I'm capable of. If you lock me out, I can make life very difficult for Astor Enterprises financially and reputationally. Is that what you want?" She flashed a knowing smile. "Remember, a scandal can sink investor confidence in seconds." Richard felt his stomach churn. This was the side of Alicia he had willfully ignored, the threatening manipulator who used intimidation to get what she wanted. He realized Cynthia had been right to warn him. Before he could respond, Alicia threw one last dagger. "Need I remind you who Richard's partner is now? The media buzz alone is worth something. Don't test me." Unable to contain his frustration, Richard motioned for Miss Rutherford and Mr. Ellison to leave them alone. He faced Alicia in tense silence, jaw clenched. "What do you think you're doing?" She softened her tone but kept her posture rigid. "I'm taking what I deserve, Richard. For months, I've invested in this relationship and your public image. Don't undermine me. We can make this so much smoother if you simply give me the role I've asked for." He glared at her. "Invested? Are you even aware that you've cost me a fortune in the last 6 months? Private jets, designer wardrobes, luxury hotels?" Alicia shrugged. "That's par for the course when you're dating someone of our social standing. Or did you think a nobody like me would remain invisible, quietly supporting your every whim for free?" A wave of regret and self-loathing washed over him. He had let lust and ego lure him away from a good woman, Cynthia, and now he was trapped in a twisted dynamic with Alicia. "I'm sorry, but you can't join the board," he said flatly. "I won't allow it." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "We'll see if you have a choice. Because if I don't get what I want, I'll leak every dirty secret about your deals, your personal vices, your so-called philanthropic projects that never got off the ground. You'll be a laughingstock and your investors will flee. Believe me, I'm not afraid to go nuclear." Richard swallowed hard. He knew Alicia had receipts, documents, emails, private conversations. She was cunning enough to have gathered these along the way, anticipating a showdown. Feeling cornered, he ran a hand through his hair. "Let's not do anything we'll regret. We can talk more about this. But I need time to handle the board." She relaxed, a victor's smile curling on her lips. "That's better. You have 72 hours to figure it out. Otherwise, well, you won't like what happens next." With that, Alicia walked out, leaving Richard reeling. He realized that his attempt to secretly dissuade the board from giving her any power had only escalated her aggression. Panic prickled beneath his skin as he contemplated the possible fallout. He needed to warn Cynthia, to find a way to contain Alicia's threat, and he needed to do it fast. In that moment, Richard understood with chilling clarity. He had betrayed the woman he once loved for a cunning mistress, and now that mistress was a viper at his throat. He couldn't help but think of Cynthia's gentle resilience. She deserved better, he thought, guilt gnawing at him. But how can I fix this before Alicia destroys everything? While Alicia plotted her corporate coup, Cynthia focused on her blossoming non-profit endeavor. She and Sarah Hopkins had secured a meeting with a coalition of donors interested in expanding shelters for single mothers. They crafted presentations, complete with statistics on homelessness among pregnant women and working-class families. Cynthia poured her heart into the project, channeling all her heartbreak into something positive. As her due date approached, anxiety flickered alongside excitement. She prepared a small bedroom in her townhouse for the baby, painting the walls a soothing shade of pale yellow and placing a comfortable rocking chair by the window. She stacked baby clothes in the dresser, each tiny outfit a testament to the life she was about to bring into the world. On a brisk Monday morning, Cynthia arrived at a local community centre, a modest brick building in Queens, to finalise a partnership with the centre's directors. She was greeted by warm smiles and an eager staff who recognised her from some philanthropic events she had once attended alongside Richard. It felt good to be seen as herself, unburdened by the scandal that had become her public identity. In a modest conference room, she delivered a heartfelt speech. "We have the resources, the passion, and the network to expand our reach beyond the shelter in Brooklyn," she said, her voice unwavering. "Our goal is to provide not just a bed, but also job training, legal assistance, and counseling services that can break the cycle of homelessness for single mothers. The time is now, and we can't afford to fail them." Her words struck a chord. By the end of the meeting, the centre's directors agreed to pool their resources and staff with Sarah's Shelter Initiative, a collaboration that could potentially serve hundreds of women in need. Cynthia felt a surge of hope and pride, a reminder that life could be purposeful and bright even without Richard. After the meeting, her phone buzzed with an incoming call from Jennifer Liu. Cynthia excused herself and answered. "What's up?" she asked. "Are you sitting down?" Jennifer said, voice trembling with excitement. The board meeting at Astor Enterprises took an unexpected turn. "I got a tip that Alicia is demanding a seat, and Richard is balking. It's turning into a power struggle." Cynthia sighed. "That doesn't surprise me. So she's applying pressure to the board? Big time. She's threatening to leak damaging info about Richard and the company if she doesn't get her way. But here's the kicker, Miss. Rutherford and several influential shareholders actually reached out to me, wanting to know your stance. They're aware you hold a minority share and that you once had a philanthropic vision for the company. They believe you might stabilize the situation if you come forward." Cynthia's heart raced. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means they're inviting you to speak at the next board session. You could sway the vote against Alicia's demands. If you oppose her appointment and provide a viable reason, there's a chance the board might rally behind you." Cynthia swallowed. A month ago, such an invitation seemed impossible. Now, she was being ushered back into the corporate world she had left behind. "And if I do this, then what?" Jennifer chuckled. "They might consider giving you a more active role in Astor Enterprises to fill the gap. It's not guaranteed, but the rumor is that some board members would back you as a stabilizing force, especially given your philanthropic interests. You can remind them of the good PR that would come from realigning the company with its original charitable goals. Astor Enterprises once prided itself on philanthropic ventures, right?" Cynthia felt a flicker of excitement. She thought of how she and Richard had dreamed of building affordable housing that combined profitability with social responsibility. Could she salvage that dream on her own, separate from the heartache? "I'll do it," she said, a surge of resolve overtaking her. "But I need to prepare." "Of course," Jennifer said. "We'll craft a statement and gather evidence that Alicia's presence could be detrimental to the company's reputation. Easy to do with her spending sprees and questionable associations." Cynthia paused, heart pounding. "Thank you, Jennifer, for everything." As she ended the call, Cynthia felt a wave of conflicting emotions, determination to protect a vision she once held dear, and a pang of sadness that Richard's downfall and Alicia's rise had made this showdown necessary. Yet there was no turning back. She wouldn't let Alicia or anyone else hijack Astor Enterprises for selfish gains, not if there was a chance to redirect it toward something meaningful. Little did she know, the upcoming board session would be more explosive than anyone anticipated, setting the stage for a dramatic confrontation that would test her newfound courage and reveal the extent of Alicia's treachery. A week later, on a crisp Monday morning, the board of Astor Enterprises convened in the main conference room, a sleek, glass-walled space overlooking Manhattan. The city skyline stood as a silent witness to the drama unfolding inside. Directors and shareholders took their seats around the long table, the air crackling with tension. Alicia arrived first, wearing a confident smirk. She wore a designer powersuit in bold crimson, as if announcing her readiness for battle. She offered polite smiles and studied nods to the board members, but behind her cordial facade, she was brimming with anticipation. "This is my moment," she thought. "They will have to let me in, or risk my wrath." Richard entered moments later, his demeanor tense. He managed quick hellos, but stayed mostly silent, seating himself near the head of the table. He looked exhausted, as though he had barely slept. Just as the meeting was about to begin, the door opened again, revealing Cynthia. Heads turned. She was visibly pregnant, wearing a simple yet elegant navy dress. Her expression held quiet determination, and she made her way to an empty seat near Miss Rutherford. Alicia's face fell, shock rippling beneath her composed exterior. "What is she doing here?" she asked in a low hiss. "She's a shareholder," Miss Rutherford replied, her voice measured. "She was invited." Richard locked eyes with Cynthia, seeming relieved yet uneasy. Cynthia acknowledged him with a brief nod, but kept her distance. She wasn't here to soothe his guilt. She was here to defend something bigger than their broken marriage. The chair of the board, Mr. Wellington, called the meeting to order. "We have pressing matters to discuss regarding Miss Alicia Monroe's request for a formal role in Astor Enterprises. We will hear arguments for and against this appointment and then take a vote." Alicia stood, smoothing her blazer, and launched into a rehearsed speech. She spoke of how she had aided in brand promotion, expanded social media reach, and introduced potential investors. She presented herself as a visionary who could help modernize Astor Enterprises' marketing approach. When she finished, Miss Rutherford cleared her throat. "Thank you, Miss Monroe. Now, we'd like to hear from other shareholders, particularly Miss Cynthia Astor, who holds a minority stake and has a personal history with the company's origins." Cynthia rose, heart thudding. She glanced around the table, steeling herself. "I appreciate the opportunity to speak." She took her breath. Astor Enterprises was founded on principles that extended beyond profit. Richard Astor and I once shared a vision of combining luxury real estate with philanthropic initiatives. Over the years, that vision has been overshadowed by relentless expansion. "I believe it's time to revisit those foundational values." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Miss Monroe's public presence is undeniable, but I worry about the impact on Astor Enterprises' reputation should she gain a formal leadership position. She has no proven track record in real estate management, has been linked to excessive spending, and is widely viewed by the public as..." Cynthia hesitated, choosing her words diplomatically. a controversial figure, to say the least. Appointing her could undermine investor confidence and distract from the company's core objectives. Alicia's mouth tightened into a thin line, but Cynthia continued, "I urge the board to consider the long-term implications. We need leadership that can restore Astor Enterprises' philanthropic commitments and ensure stable growth. Let Miss Monroe keep her personal relationship with Mr. Astor if she must, but this board seat belongs to someone aligned with the company's ethical standards and strategic goals." A tense hush followed, then Alicia shot up, seething. "This is absurd. Cynthia is hardly objective. She's Richard's scorned wife. She's just trying to sabotage me out of jealousy. She can't even see straight because she's still hung up on him." Cynthia remained calm, though her pulse raced. "My personal feelings are irrelevant. The question is, what's best for the company? You've threatened to reveal damaging secrets if you're not given a seat. That alone is reason enough to question your motives and suitability." Alicia's eyes flashed dangerously. "You self-righteous." Mr. Wellington banged his gavel. "Order. Miss Monroe, I'll ask you to stay composed." She fumed but sat down. One by one, board members weighed in. Some praised Alicia's social media savvy. Others expressed concern about her lack of professional credentials and the negative publicity swirling around her. Richard sat silently, looking as though he wanted to vanish into the chair. Finally, Mr. Wellington called for the vote. He explained the process. Each board member and major shareholder present would cast a yes or no for Alicia's appointment. Hands slowly rose around the table. Cynthia's heart hammered. "Miss Rutherford, number I. Mr. Ellison, number." A few reluctant yes votes from members who feared Alicia's potential retribution. Then Mr. Wellington tallied the final outcome. "The majority is against appointing Miss Monroe to a formal position at Astor Enterprises," he announced. "Therefore, the motion fails." Alicia went pale. She stared daggers at Richard, who refused to meet her gaze. Then she lurched to her feet, trembling with fury. "You will regret this," she spat. She grabbed her designer handbag and stormed out, heels clacking like gunshots against the marble floor. A collective exhale swept through the room. Mr. Wellington concluded, "We thank Miss Astor for her input. Now, for the second matter, Astor Enterprises' philanthropic future. We'd like to propose the creation of a new corporate social responsibility division, possibly chaired or co-chaired by Miss Astor, to guide the company back to its roots." A wave of cautious excitement rippled around the table. Cynthia was taken aback by how quickly the board wanted to move. "I'm honored," she said, careful not to let triumph overshadow her professionalism. "We'll need to flesh out the details, but I'm interested in exploring how we can reintegrate philanthropic projects into our overall strategy." After some discussion, the meeting adjourned. Most members lingered, eager to shake Cynthia's hand or congratulate her on the upcoming baby. Eventually she found herself alone with Richard. He approached, his eyes full of gratitude and regret. "You saved the company," he murmured. "Thank you." She lifted her chin. "I didn't do it for you," she said softly. Astor Enterprises deserved a fair chance to live up to its original vision. And our child, she placed a hand on her belly, deserves to see what this family's name can stand for. If you want to be part of that, you need to prove it. Richard nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. "I understand. I'll do anything to make amends." Cynthia didn't respond, but she offered a sad smile. For the first time, she felt hope that she could protect her child's legacy and her own dignity. Yet, neither of them imagined how viciously Alicia would retaliate now that she had been publicly humiliated. That evening, the entire board's decision splashed across social media and financial news sites. Gossip pages relished the drama of how Alicia Monroe had been denied a seat. likely severing her influence in Astor Enterprises. Online commenters weighed in, some gleefully pointing out Alicia's downfall, others wondering if she would exact revenge. Over the next hour, Alicia spilled her venom, feeding Brenton every piece of incriminating evidence she had: questionable offshore accounts Astor Enterprises used, hush money payments to local government officials for building permits, and even text exchanges Richard had once carelessly sent about, overshadowing philanthropic commitments in favor of more profitable deals. Alicia held nothing back, fueled by a singular desire for revenge. Within 48 hours, the tabloid site ran a bombshell article titled "Behind the Facade: Shocking Secrets of Astor Enterprises." The story was scathing, a searing indictment of corruption and hypocrisy. It included redacted text messages from Richard's phone, references to corporate emails, and allegations of bribery. The mainstream media picked it up like wildfire. Astor Enterprises stocks plummeted. Investors panicked. The board scrambled to do damage control, issuing statements of denial and promising internal investigations. Richard's phone rang incessantly. He stared at the tabloids in horror, realizing how thoroughly Alicia had prepared for a scorched earth scenario. That evening, Cynthia stepped in front of the cameras at a hastily organized press conference outside Astor Enterprises headquarters. Dozens of reporters jockeyed for position, microphones and cameras aimed at her. She inhaled deeply, remembering her training in public speaking from her Columbia days. "I understand the serious allegations against Astor Enterprises," she began, voice resolute. "As a shareholder and someone committed to ethical corporate practices, I promise that we are taking immediate steps to investigate all claims. If there is any truth to these allegations, we will rectify them, cooperate with authorities, and hold those responsible accountable. I also pledge that our renewed philanthropic initiatives will remain transparent, ensuring funds and projects benefit the communities they're meant to serve." Reporters hurled questions about Richard's role, Alicia's motivations, and Cynthia's personal feelings. She carefully navigated them, emphasizing that her priority was to rebuild public trust and protect the company's legitimate employees and partners who had no part in potential corruption. A few hours later, the interview clips dominated the business news cycle. Some pundits praised Cynthia's composure, commending her for standing up in a time of crisis. Others dismissed it as a PR stunt. Yet, stock prices began to stabilize slightly. Her earnest tone seemed to calm investors enough to keep them from fleeing en masse. Behind the scenes, Cynthia confronted Richard. "We need a full audit," she said firmly. "There might be skeletons in the closet even you don't know about." Richard nodded, shoulders sagging. "You're right. I was too fixated on profits to notice how some deals were brokered. I'm willing to face the consequences." Cynthia studied him. For once, he looked sincere, haunted by the catastrophe. "This is bigger than you or me," she said softly. "We have to do what's right." He agreed, tears pooling in his eyes. "I never wanted it to come to this. Alicia, I can't believe what she's done." Cynthia gave him a sad smile. "Maybe this is the karma we both needed to see. For me, to realize my own strength. For you, to understand that choices have consequences." As they braced for the legal storm, neither anticipated the final twist. Alicia had orchestrated one that would threaten not just the company, but Cynthia's personal well-being. She hurriedly called Jennifer Liu, who rushed over to help her get to the hospital. Cynthia tried to remain calm, breathing as she'd learned in her prenatal classes. But fear pricked at her mind, fear of delivering early, fear of facing motherhood alone. Fear that the chaos surrounding Astor Enterprises would overshadow the baby's arrival. By the time they reached the hospital, Cynthia was in full-blown labor. Nurses rushed her into a maternity ward, hooking her up to monitors. The next few hours blurred into a haze of pain, breathing exercises, and medical instructions. Jennifer stayed by her side, offering steady words of encouragement. In the midst of the ordeal, Richard burst into the room, breathless and frantic. "I'm here," he said, eyes wide with worry. "I heard you were in labor. I want to be here." Cynthia was too overwhelmed by contractions to argue. She merely nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. A swirl of memories washed over her, how they once talked about this moment as an exciting milestone in their love story. Now it was tinged with heartbreak and upheaval. Yet Richard's presence comforted her in a way she couldn't deny, a flicker of the man she had once trusted. After hours of agonizing labor, with Richard and Jennifer at her side, Cynthia delivered a healthy baby girl. The cries of the newborn filled the room, a sound that cut through all the sorrow and drama like a beacon of hope. Exhausted and drenched in sweat, Cynthia wept with relief. Her baby was here safe and beautiful. Richard stood by the bedside, tears streaming down his face as he glimpsed his daughter for the first time. He gently touched the baby's tiny fingers, awe lighting up his eyes. "She's perfect," he murmured. Cynthia cradled the infant against her chest, heart brimming with a love deeper than she had ever known. In that moment, the swirling scandal seemed distant, overshadowed by the miracle of new life. For a fleeting second, she allowed herself to believe that they might heal, that this child could bring them back together in some capacity, even if just as co-parents. But that fragile moment of peace was short-lived. A nurse tapped on Cynthia's shoulder, looking apologetic. "Miss Astor, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's someone outside. Miss Munro. She's demanding to see Mr. Astor." Cynthia's body tensed. Richard's face paled. "Alicia?" he asked, in a hushed tone. "Yes," the nurse said, glancing uncomfortably at the mother and newborn. "She's quite insistent. Should I call security?" Cynthia looked at Richard, who seemed torn. She nodded to the nurse. "Yes, have security remove her from the premises. This is a maternity ward." "I won't have drama here, especially not with my newborn." The nurse left, and Richard lowered his gaze, guilt mingling with relief that Cynthia was standing firm. For once, he didn't protest. He wanted to shield them from Alicia's chaos, especially now. Outside, Alicia raged. She berated hospital staff, threatened lawsuits, and demanded to see Richard. When security approached, she brandished her phone, screaming, "I have a right to speak with him. He's the father of my child too, if I ever choose to have one." Her words disintegrated into a tirade of insults and expletives. In the weeks following the baby's birth, life took a surprising turn. While Astor Enterprises battled to clear its name, Cynthia's calm, transparent approach with the media and investors gradually restored confidence. The board officially appointed her as head of a newly formed philanthropic division, giving her the authority to distribute funds for affordable housing and community projects. Public sentiment shifted, applauding her leadership during crisis. Alicia attempted more stunts, leaking additional documents, staging sensational claims, but her credibility had nosedived. The viral video of her screaming in the hospital corridor became a meme. Her threats lost traction. Investors saw her as an opportunistic meddler, and tabloids began to paint her as a cautionary tale. Meanwhile, Richard separated himself from Alicia, cutting off her access to funds and properties. Though legal battles loomed over the leaked corporate secrets, Alicia found her allies dwindling. Without Richard's money, she struggled to maintain her lifestyle. Designers who once lent her gowns stopped returning her calls. Elite event organizers quietly dropped her from guest lists. She drifted further and further from the glittering circles she had once conquered. Cynthia, on the other hand, thrived as a new mother and burgeoning leader. She balanced late-night feedings with conference calls, philanthropic events with diaper changes. The sweet lullabies she sang to her daughter were a testament that life, while unpredictable, could still bloom with hope after betrayal. One evening, after a particularly successful fundraiser for a women's shelter in Brooklyn, Cynthia returned home to find Richard waiting at her doorstep. He held a small gift bag and looked nervous. She let him in. Curiosity piqued. They sat in the living room, the baby asleep upstairs. "I wanted to give you this," Richard said, handing her the bag. Inside was a simple gold locket engraved with their daughter's initials, C.A. A soft smile touched Cynthia's lips. "Thank you," she said, fingering the locket. He exhaled shakily. "I know I can never undo the pain I caused. But I'm here, if you'll allow it. I'd like to be part of our daughter's life, in whatever capacity you deem fit." Cynthia studied his expression: remorse, sincerity, a glimmer of the man she once loved. "She's your child," she said quietly. "I won't keep you away, but we need to move slowly. Our relationship has a lot to heal from." He nodded, relief evident. "I understand." That night, after Richard left, Cynthia gazed at the framed photographs on the mantel, pictures from her wedding, capturing two people who believed they had everything figured out. She no longer felt bitterness. She had survived betrayal, heartbreak, and public scandal. Now, with her daughter in her arms, she had gained a new perspective on resilience, love, and the unpredictability of fate. By contrast, Alicia's life spiraled into obscurity. She hopped between rented apartments, partying with whoever could foot her bills. She tried dating another millionaire, but rumors of her manipulative schemes preceded her. Doors closed. Opportunities evaporated. Eventually, she left New York in search of new prospects, but her reputation had already tarnished her name. Stripped of her illusions and status, Alicia learned the hard way that betrayal leaves scars on the betrayer as well. In the end, the mistress who thought she won learned that ill-gotten gains never last. Cynthia, the pregnant wife abandoned by her millionaire husband, emerged stronger, wiser, and triumphantly in control of her own destiny. She had the last laugh, not through vengeance, but through grace, integrity, and an unwavering commitment to shaping a better world for her daughter. Thank you for joining us on this emotional roller coaster of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimate redemption. We watched a millionaire's pregnant wife endure the unthinkable public humiliation, abandonment, and the schemes of a cunning mistress. But adversity revealed her true strength, leading her to create a future more radiant than anyone anticipated. From near ruin to renewed hope, Cynthia discovered that dignity and perseverance trump the hollow victories of manipulation. If this story moved you, if you felt Cynthia's heartbreak, cheered her triumph, and learned a lesson about the power of unwavering resolve, then please do take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Spread this cautionary tale so others might remember that real success is built on honesty and heart, not betrayal. Your support helps us bring more dramatic, inspiring stories to life. Together, let's celebrate the human spirit's remarkable capacity to rise above even the darkest of times.